welcome to this deep dive. And this one is really unsettling. We're going to be looking into this Kentucky case. It's got, well, we're talking dismembered body, we're talking standoff with the police, and just a lot of questions left unanswered about this whole thing. So to put all the pieces together, we've got 3 different articles. We're going to look at AP News, we're going to look at HuffPost, we're going to look at Law and Crime.
Yeah, and that's what makes this story so interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because each one of these articles kind of gives us, they layer on each other. They give us a little bit more information in a different detail that helps us understand what happened leading up to this just awful discovery in Mount Olivet, Kentucky.
So let's set the scene a little bit. It's a Wednesday afternoon, and this guy, this maintenance worker, he's been hired to do, some routine property maintenance, heads out to the backyard and just stumbles onto right out of a horror movie.
It's not even just that he finds a body, right? It's that it's such a clearly violent scene. The victim was dismembered, obvious signs of a struggle. I mean, talk about a terrifying, just shocking thing to experience.
Hard to even wrap your mind around that. So naturally, police are called. They get to the area, they secure it, they start their investigation. They learn that the victim is actually the homeowner, a woman named Trudy Fields. But here's where things take an even darker turn, okay? Inside the house, they find Trudy's daughter, 32-year-old Torilena May Fields.
And it's not just that she's inside the house. She's acting really erratically. There's blood on her clothes. She won't cooperate with police at all. Refuses to come out. Leads to this really intense standoff. I mean, the police even had to end up using tear gas, and they have to use a robot to try and even communicate with her.
Wow. Sounds like something you see in a movie. What do you think is going through her head at this point?
Who knows?
Eventually, she surrenders, and we learn from the maintenance worker this wasn't his first one-in with Torilena.
Yeah, and this is where all those little extra details we get from the different articles, especially the AP News and the HuffPost piece, those become super important, right?
Yeah.
The worker had been at the property the day before, and he described her behavior then as being really, really erratic. She was confrontational. He even said that she was casting spells.
Okay. Now that sends chills down my spine. Casting spells. What do we even do with that? Especially knowing everything else that we know now.
It's really unsettling. It could point to some sort of mental break, maybe amplified by drug use, which the police think might be a factor.
Yeah.
It's just one of those details that leads to more questions than answers, especially when you consider what the police find inside the house.
Okay. This is where things get really, really disturbing. You're telling me there's more.
Oh, yeah. Inside the house, police find a pot in the oven. And it's not empty. It's got what looks like cooked human remains.
Wait, cooked human remains? That is absolutely horrifying. To even think that somebody could do something like that. It's almost unfathomable.
And according to that HuffPost article, the pot was still warm when they found it. I mean, it just adds another layer of horror to this already gruesome discovery.
Yeah.
I mean, that combined with the way she was acting with that maintenance worker, it paints a very, very disturbing picture of what was going on with Torilena in those days leading up to this.
How do you even process something like that? What kind of charges are we even talking about here? I mean, this is bad.
Yeah, all 3 of the articles actually mention the same charges, abusing a corpse, tampering with evidence, and then obstructing governmental operations.
Right.
And those are serious. And you start, you factor in that potential drug use and the way that she was acting, it really starts to feel like we could be looking at like a full-blown psychotic break here,
And that Law and Crime article that you mentioned, does that add anything else here? I feel like it's almost too much to unpack.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And this is where it gets really interesting. So that Law and Crime piece, it really goes into detail about those police interviews. What they learned about how Torilena was acting towards those maintenance workers. Remember, those guys were at the house twice.
Right.
The day before they found the body, and then again on the day that they found the body.
Right. And both times she's acting super strange, almost like she was trying to get them to leave her alone. Like, get out of here, don't come back. Do you think that maybe she knew that they had seen something? Or that they might come back?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's the big question, right? And that's something that investigators are obviously going to be trying to work out. Because if you connect that behavior right to everything else that we know, it really starts to make you wonder if this was premeditated. This wasn't just a daughter reacting to something awful that happened. It's like her actions suggest that she may have put some thought into this, which is really, really chilling.
Yeah. No, that sends chills down my spine, just hearing you say that. Makes you think about their relationship and what could have possibly led to this. That HuffPost article, they seem to focus a lot on the drug use angle.
They did. But I think it's important to remember that while substance abuse is a really serious issue, it doesn't always equal this. It doesn't always equal violence like this. What's fascinating here is that we've got these potential mental health issues, we've got potential substance abuse issues, and then this just awful, awful act, right?
Yeah.
It's clearly a much more complex story than we might initially think when we just see the headline.
Yeah. Yeah, this isn't just about solving a crime here. This is about trying to understand people and what could lead someone to this point.
And that's where things get really unsettling, right?
Uh,
Because it forces us to confront this uncomfortable idea that there aren't always easy answers. There aren't always explanations for this kind of darkness.
It's a really it is a stark reminder that things are not always what they seem. Even in, what you would think is a quiet town like Mount Olivet, Kentucky, we have to ask ourselves, what happened here? What happened? Makes you think, behind closed doors, any one of us could be going through something and we might not even know about it. It's kind of scary when you think about it.
Hmm.
So, what can we even learn from all of this? How do we even begin to try to prevent these things from happening?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it forces us to really think about mental health awareness,
You're right.
and support in our communities. Could things have been different here? What if there had been some early intervention? What if there had been more resources available? What if somebody had just noticed that something was wrong? We'll never know for sure in this case, but it's something to think about for sure.
It really is. It makes you wonder, like, were there signs there that people just missed? Or were there just not enough resources, like you said, to even help?
Yeah, and that's probably something that people who knew Torilena and Trudy, that's something that they're thinking about right now, I'm sure. It just highlights how important it is, talk about mental health,
Yeah.
to make it okay for people to come forward when they need help without feeling ashamed or judged.
Yeah, for sure. We need to be more supportive, not just as individuals, but as a community, right?
Yeah.
Checking in on our neighbors, our friends, our families. And not just when we think that something's wrong, but just as part of, how we interact with each other.
Exactly. Sometimes just a simple, how are you doing? That can make all the difference in the world to someone who is struggling. And that's what's so heartbreaking about this case, right? We're left with these awful details, these unanswered questions, and just knowing that a life was lost
Hmm.
and another life completely changed forever.
Yeah. We've dug into the details of this Kentucky case, the discovery, the standoff, the charges, all of it. But what really sticks with me are the questions, the things we're left wondering even after we're done talking about this.
And and maybe that's the point, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe there aren't always going to be easy answers when it comes to cases like this. But it at least forces us to confront this stuff. Mental health,
Mm.
individual struggles,
Yeah.
and just how much potential for violence there is all around us. It should challenge us all to be more aware, more compassionate, and more proactive in actually reaching out to people.
This deep dive, it's been fascinating, but it's also been really, really unsettling. And it just reminds you how complex people are. We're never going to have all the answers in a case like this, but having these conversations, these tough conversations, that's got to be a step in the right direction.